Man, when I was a kid, everyone was into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We had the comics, the TV show, and a buttload of video games and merchandising to eat up. But imagine the excitement when the movie came out. I was 10 when the movie came out, and I was a huge fan of the characters, but believe it or not, I haven't seen the movie since then. When I brought it up for this review, I'm literally watching something that I haven't seen in 20 years, and I wasn't sure how it was going to hold up. Although my interest in the Turtles had understandably waned over the years, there's always a nostalgia factor to things from your childhood, so I always had a bit of a soft spot for the Turtles, despite the fact that they got increasingly lame, with unfortunate sequels to the movie, the cancellation of the original TV show, and the self-cannibalization the franchise went through. Even the games got bad, with the Super NES Turtles in Time game being the last big hurrah. Thank fuck I got out before the Christmas special came out. I probably would have disavowed the entire franchise right there. That being said, one thing you should know about the Turtles is that there's several different versions of them. They originally appeared in a series of comics done by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, published by Mirage Comics. The first Turtles story was done in a series called Gobbledygook, and was actually more satirical as anything, mostly a spoof of the Daredevil comic, though with elements of other comics thrown in, most notably Cerberus. Later on, they got their own series, and it was much more grim and violent, with the Turtles revealed to be assassins raised by a mutated rat named Splinter. He raised them and trained them in the martial arts to seek out and kill Oroku Saki, the man who killed Splinter's master. Oroku Saki had taken on the identity of the Shredder, and believe it or not, the Turtles viciously murder him in the very first issue of the series, something that set the tone for the rest of the comic. The cartoon that came out later on was understandably different in tone. It was a lot less violent, and usually the Turtles fought other mutants or robots, and the Shredder was a recurring villain who was pretty ineffective and had two bumbling underlings who caused him his plans to fail. The TV show was light on violence and heavy on humor, and it was extremely popular at the time, so when the movie came out, a lot of people assumed it would be based on the cartoon. But it was actually much more based on the comic, though several things from the cartoon were used. For example, April O'Neil is a TV reporter rather than a lab assistant, and the Turtles wore differently colored bandanas, which is actually pretty helpful, as it lets you visually identify them much easier. The plot of the movie starts with April O'Neil's report on crimes in the city. A seemingly senseless crime wave is sweeping through the city, and there are rumors that young runaways are being inducted into a secret society known as the Foot Clan. April is uncovering too much, so the Foot Clan come after her, but she's rescued by Raphael, one of the Turtles. They bring her back to her lair in the sewer to revive her, and their master Splinter tells her their origin. Splinter was the pet rat of a man named Hamoto Yoshi. Yoshi's lover was killed by an assassin, Oroku Saki, who also killed Yoshi when he found Saki over her body. Splinter escaped his cage and attacked Saki, but as a rat was unable to do anything, Saki cut off his ear with a swipe of a blade before escaping. Splinter fled to America, where he found 4 baby turtles in a sewer wallowing in toxic waste. He rescued them and was exposed to the waste himself, and the Turtles and Splinter both started mutating, increasing in size as well as intellect. Taking on 4 of them as sons, Splinter trains them in the martial arts and names them after famous artists. To thank them for saving her, April brings the Turtles back to their apartment for pizza, but they're spotted by her boss's son Danny, who is a member of the Foot Clan. He tells this to the leader of the Foot Clan, a mysterious ninja called the Shredder, who was looking for the Turtles as he heard of their fighting abilities and finds their style to be familiar. When the Turtles return to their lair, they find Splinter missing. Raphael argues with his brothers and leaves on his own, where he's attacked by the Foot Clan and badly injured. The rest of the Turtles arrive and manage to drive off the Foot. They leave the city, going to an old farm owned by April, along with a vigilante named Casey Jones who had gotten mixed up in their fight. Raphael eventually recovers and through meditation they contact Splinter, who leads them to his location. Splinter had befriended Danny, who regrets joining the Foot Clan, and had hidden out in the Turtles' lair. After returning home, they attack the Foot successfully, rescuing Splinter, but are defeated by the Shredder, whose fighting ability is far beyond them. Splinter confronts the Shredder, saying that he knows that he is Oroku Saki, and reveals that he is the rat who scarred him. The Shredder viciously attacks Splinter, who dispatches him easily, knocking him off a rooftop into a garbage truck, which Casey Jones activates the crushing mechanism, killing Saki. The movie, I think, has actually aged pretty well, and I was pleased to see that there are a lot of parts of the movie that went way over my head when I was 10, and that I appreciate more now. As a kid, I focused a lot on the differences between the movie and the show that I was familiar with, not really knowing about the comics that much, so I didn't understand why Splinter was a pet of Yoshi and not Yoshi himself. But honestly, this makes way much more sense. I also found that there was a few jokes put in there that kids definitely wouldn't have gotten. They were put in there for the parents who had to take their kids to see the movie and went over my head as a kid. Like when Don calls Casey a claustrophobic and he says, "Hey, hey, hey, I've never even looked at another guy." Honestly, I think I like the movie more as an adult than I did as a kid, and that says a lot. There were sequels later on. The second movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Secret of the Ooze, was much more like the cartoon than the comics or the first movie, and injected much more comedy and goofiness into it, while leaving the grittiness and dark storytelling of the first film behind. It also reuses the Shredder, who I guess didn't really die in the first film after all. It's not nearly as good, but it's still watchable and fun. The third movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, is just balls-out awful. Even as a kid, I hated it. The fourth one, which came out only a few years ago and was simply called TMNT, traded in live action for CGI animation. I haven't seen it, so I really can't comment on it. The original is the best, then, as far as I'm concerned. I'll give it an 8 out of a possible 10. Well, that's it. Another February gone, another movie review feature done. I got a nice one planned for next year, but I gotta say, out of the 3 that I've done so far, this one has been my favorite, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next February with more movie reviews, and of course, tomorrow with a new feature.